Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche organization with your daily video update for March 12th, 2024. I want to begin today by paying tribute to one of my dear colleagues, Renee Segerson, who passed away yesterday. I've known and worked with Renee and her husband John for the more than 50 years that they were involved with the LaRouche movement. Renee was what we called a warrior angel. Someone who made the fight for truth her passion, her commitment, and her guiding principle from the time I knew her till the moment of her passing. As you'll hear from me today, it's that fight for truth and the justice which flows from truth, which drove Renee, which is what all of us have to fight for today. It's only by acting on that basis that we'll be able to pull the world from the horrors that we face as the military-industrial financial complex is pursuing a series of wars and destabilizations which threaten the very existence of humanity on this planet. We're all headed over a cliff unless we show the kind of spirit and determined energy that Renee put into everything that she did. So it's in her honor that I'm presenting the following picture of the world today. And one of the highest truths, or higher truths, I should say, which must prevail, is that there's no military solution to the wars which are underway. This is true of Ukraine. It's true where the war hawks of the corporate cartels of the military-industrial financial complex, excuse me, where they're continuing on a course to destroy that nation in their goal of destroying Russia, using Ukraine as a sledgehammer against Russia. That war is lost, and yet they won't acknowledge it. Why keep it going? It's the refusal of the West, the leaders of the United States, the United Kingdom, and NATO, to recognize their errors and to end it through negotiations. If they don't do that, it runs the risk of escalation, which could be a war between NATO and Russia, which then could escalate into a nuclear war. To what end? To protect their egos? These are soulless monsters who are willing to kill ruthlessly for the sake of appeasing their masters of the corporate cartels, the military-industrial financial complex. That's what's behind the policies of Biden and Blinken, of Sunak and Macron, of Ursula von der Leyen and Baerbock. They refuse to recognize reality, and they're making all of us pay the price for that refusal. Now, the same is true for Gaza, as in the case of Ukraine. An open letter was sent to Biden on March 7th, signed by hundreds of rabbis and cantors in the United States, calling for Biden to withdraw support from Netanyahu. They wrote in the letter, quote, "There is no military solution in Gaza," unquote. That should be clear. How does authorizing and funding, providing weapons and political support for the murder of thousands of children, how does that put an end to the so-called danger of terrorism from Hamas? It's one of these breaks from reality which shows the degree to which greed and evil control governments of the Western world. What we have to face is that the fighting in Ukraine did not begin in February 2022, nor did the fighting in Gaza begin on October 7th of last year. There's a backstory to these situations, which goes back to the end of World War II. In the case of Gaza, it goes back to the beginnings of the 20th century, the British imperial geopolitical doctrine, which insisted that for reasons of empire, the British must control the situation in Southwest Asia. This was what was behind the Sykes-Picot Agreement to carve up the nations between the mandate for France and the mandate for Britain. the Balfour Declaration to launch a Zionist colonial operation to drive the Palestinians out of their homeland and to cleanse it for those who escaped the Holocaust in Europe. They used Zionism for the purposes of British imperial control. Now, Ukraine, the current situation goes back to the collapse of the Soviet Union, where the US was declared as the winner of the Cold War, the sole superpower, the hegemon, with the Wolfowitz doctrine defining what became known to Blinken and others as the unipolar order, that the United States won and that the United States will dictate the terms to the rest of the world. Either you accept it or you will be targeted. How many have died in pursuit of this order? How many people in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Gaza, in Libya, in Ukraine, in Yugoslavia? How many Americans have died and how many have paid the price through injury and the post-war trauma? How many? And how many more will if the grip of power is not taken away from these people? Now, the world has changed. The sole superpower is struggling to survive. And it can only survive by imposing its arbitrary will on the nations of the world through force, through regime change, through economic blackmail, through conditionalities, through war, and through censorship, all of which aims at preventing the truth of the situation from being known. And that truth is that there are nations of the world, especially in the global south, the former colonial nations, that are demanding that their voice be heard, that the needs of their people be met, not by give-outs, not by handouts, but by giving them the opportunity to use their raw materials and their human material to develop their own nations, not as slaves for an imperial order, but as sovereign citizens in sovereign nations. That's what this fight is about. That's the truth that the censors and the psychological warriors or warfare experts don't want you to know. But we're seeing that emerge in any case with the courage of leaders in the southern countries, the southern hemisphere, stepping forward and demanding their rights. Now, if the military-industrial financial complex is not stopped, we face a world of increasing tragedy, of increasing death, which ultimately will threaten to destroy human life on this planet. To achieve the victory for truth and justice, the Schiller Institute is going to hold an international online conference on April 13th on LaRouche's Oasis plan, which was designed by Lyndon LaRouche as a blueprint for a world in which nations cooperate peacefully for the development of each other, for the benefit of each other. That's the only way out of this world of war and force, of lying and censorship. If you believe that higher truth must prevail, then I would urge you to use the link in the description section below to register for our conference on April 13th, and to join us in this fight to see that truth and justice prevail over ignorance, greed, and evil. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you again tomorrow.